Ho ho, holy shit, we're doing this. After mulling the wine and the ideas, it was decided that I should binge Christmas movies for a week because I'm a glutton for punishment. So, welcome to the Decemberfest Podcast. I am Jeff, your host and humbug for this holiday hootenanny, and today we are going to break down 20 holiday films, movies, programs, the 20 things I experienced this week. How did this happen? I hear you not asking. Well, I thought it might be fun to try something a little different for the holidays. I thought a single week of Xmas movies would be an easy task and a nice way to wrap up the year. I thought I was prepared for whatever came at me. I thought wrong. I asked Heidi, regular co-host of the longer cast episodes, to curate a list of Christmas picks for me, and committed to a minimum of 20 for the week. I underestimated a few things. The busy nature of the season, the good nature of my tormentor, she was much kinder to me than I would have been, and the depths of the well from which this trash can be pulled. There are probably hundreds of look-alike Hallmark-style pulp nonsense flicks with some variation on the theme of near-perfect person with one flaw is unable to find love until they meet the other perfect person in this totally unexpected way. Luckily, I only had to watch like 8 of those. But enough of this merry meandering. Let's get to the goods. And I did start with the good. I knew this wasn't going to be the easiest task for me. I'm not really the target demo for the holiday hurrah. So I chose to begin with a movie that would bring me into the spirit without breaking my own. Christmas Vacation from 1989. I shouldn't need to say much here. The title alone brings most movie fans fond memories. Clark Griswold and his wonderfully chaotic family gathering is a great example of how a movie can be more than the basis of its plot. John Hughes manages to pack the script with jokes, both obvious and subtle, and Chevy Chase, Beverly D'Angelo, and an unusually clothed Juliette Lewis nail them home with great performances. Of course, there are memorable lines throughout, but the real laughs for me come from the unspoken turns, like the annoyed look from Lewis when told her brother is sharing her room, or D'Angelo's positioning during the police raid. It's not flawless. There are no forested mountains in Illinois to farm a tree from. But as the Griswold family Christmas shows us, things don't need to be perfect to be perfect. A lot of folks will throw this on in the background around the holiday season and not look at the screen. But it's worthy of a real rewatch. Or 10. Bolstered by a classic, I waded into my first challenge of the week. A Nonsense Christmas with Sabrina Carpenter. This Netflix special runs less than an hour, though it did feel longer. And it's packed with celebrity guests, I guess, and songs and skits, and I was so fucking confused. I was full of questions. Who are these people? Why is the crowd so excited to see them? How did they get funding for all this? Where are her pants? Why am I laughing so much? All right, credit where due. Carpenter, whoever she may be, is a charming enough host, and is pretty upfront about the special from the get-go. She knows it's a fairly generic concept and keeps it lively with some decent and indecent jokes in between saccharine love ballads and pulp pot performances. I didn't hate this as much as I expected to, though I will need to play the drinking game I came up with to go through it again. Drink every time she has a costume change and comes out not wearing pants. It's like the girl's allergic to having her legs covered. This is not a complaint. Bonus points for a Sean Astin cameo. I closed out the first night of viewing with another classic, 1983's A Christmas Story. I gotta drop a hot take here. I don't connect with this movie. It has its moments, and it's not a bad film, but I can't relate to any of the scenarios here. It feels a bit like Christmas Vacation for my parents' generation. I think nostalgia brings a lot to the party here, and it's not nostalgia I share. This is around the point when I decided I'm not going to rate the movies for this binge. I usually assign some arbitrary and often inconsistent numerical evaluation for my Decemberfest flicks, but after more than 500 of those movies, I have an understanding of what they should and could be. This is not that. I am out of my element. And so instead of numbers no one cares about, I'll just be spouting opinion that no one cares about. This is productive. On to the next. In 1994, kids all over America learned to read the fine print thanks to The Santa Claus, a nightmare of legal fiction. I know a lot of people have fond memories of this movie, but they should not. The premise is terrible. If you kill Santa and put on his suit, you inherit the powers and responsibilities of Santa. There's no out. You're doomed to become a jolly home-invading monster. And fat. The movie is sure to remind you of fat. There's so much fat shaming in this movie, the producers should owe reparations. But let's move past this, even if the writers weren't able to. Scott Calvin, Tim Allen, is a top dog sales guy for a toy company. He loves his kid, but is an unreliable father because sometimes he's late to see his son and has trouble connecting with him. This isn't helped by the kid's stepfather, Judge Reinhold, as a heel psychiatrist who seems to have everyone convinced a 6-year-old believing in Santa is a war crime. The obvious character arc here would be Calvin starting as a bad father, always putting himself first and dismissing the whole Christmas thing as a waste. But instead, he's a dad with partial custody, doing his best to celebrate a holiday with his kid who's being pulled away from him. They don't dwell on this. Instead, they turn him into a walking fat joke and spend way too much time on his progression into an old man. Speaking of way too much time, I'm getting too deep into this when there are real messes ahead. I don't care for the Santa Claus, and I'm annoyed that made 3 of them. I'm sure they'll be rebooted next year using some TikTok celeb I've never heard of. Sticking with Santa-themed cinema, next on the list was The Christmas Chronicles from 2018. Kurt Russell stars as a grittier kind of Santa here, who has to escape from Chicago, maybe, who remembers, after a couple of kids sneak aboard his rocket sled and make him crash. Pliskin Claus and his audience surrogates have a variety of adventures, and Russell gets to break out his old Elvis shtick doing a musical number in a jail cell. Along the way, the kids are brought together and blah, 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 true meaning of Christmas. Big Trouble in Little Christmas is fine, but it leans kind of heavy on the dead parent trope for emotional connection. It gets a bonus point for a cameo by Goldie Hawn as Miss Claus. And then we have Noel, a 2019 Disney product, packed full of advertisements for Desert Ridge Marketplace TM. It's about as unpredictable as a game of tic-tac-toe. But thanks to some charm from Anna Kendrick and Bill Hader, I didn't hate this. Pitch Perfect stars as Santa's daughter, scion of a long line of Kringles, who apparently have feudal rule over not only Christmas, but also a town full of folks somewhere up north. When her old man kicks it and her fail son brother Hader isn't quite up to the task of taking the big red chair, Stacy Pilgrim recommends he take a quick vacation to get his shit together. Instead, he decides to stay gone and become a yoga instructor, and she's blamed for ruining Christmas. What's a Nepo baby to do? Well, she jets off to sunny Phoenix to find the guy who doesn't want to do a job he's unqualified, rather than trying to make it work herself. There's also a tech bro cousin who decides to move fast and break Christmas, to add some conflict to a largely toothless tale. It's going to be a trend here, toothless, especially with what comes next. Damn it. But let's wrap this one up first. Pitch Perfect 3 learns that she inherited the magic of Santa and nepotism's good after all. It's a broken message and a mediocre movie, but on the sliding scale of Christmas crap, this is pretty entertaining. But now we get to the real meat of the season. I had to choke down a big hunk of Christmas garbage. 3 courses of steaming, flexing dudes. Starting with Hot Frosty from 2024. Lacey Chabert has it so rough. She's an uncomfortably successful baker in a small town where everyone knows and likes her. She had a loving husband who she lost to cancer seemingly before she turned 35, and now her life is just a mess. You can tell because she has broken heater and a roof leak. There's no way to fix that unless you find a hunky man who used to be made of water, ice, and horny old lady magic. Luckily, some meddling olds who run an antique shop gave her a magic scarf to help her find someone to give her life some life-altering loving, which she decides to get rid of by wrapping around a snowman in what should seem like an attempt at murder. Of course, this can't be a normal snowman. It has to be one carved to look like Ted from Schitt's Creek. Dustin Milligan, who I only know from the Levy family motel drama because I'm not a Quebecois child, magically appears and plays the styrofoam snowman, buck-ass nude, running around a town with a scarf covering his airbrushed abs. While he doesn't know much, he figures out basic decency pretty quickly and pilfers some things from the same old folks who supplied the magic neck condom. This triggers the overzealous sheriff, played by doing his best Craig Robinson, and his deputy, who should have just been named Charles Boyle, because, come on, to hunt for the mysterious thief. Because the story needs some kind of conflict, and it's not coming from anywhere else. As an excuse to keep abs on screen as much as possible, Snowhead gets hot easily, and so refuses to wear a shirt most of the time. There's some Edward Scissorhands in the suburbs antics, some ridiculous plot, and over the course of 3 days he exists, he makes Party of 5 fall in love with him. Here's the problem. Frosty the boyfriend says a couple of times that he's a fast learner, but he's been alive for 72 hours and has the emotional maturity of a schnauzer. A grown-ass woman should know better than to enter into a relationship here. Also, better hope the bed's waterproof because he's going to melt. The day did not get better when I saw the next movie on my list, The Merry Gentleman, which was also pushed out in 2024. Starring generic Pretty Blonde and geriatric Chad Michael Murray. This one has the star of a Broadway Christmas review return home to her small Midwestern town of make-believe. Upon her return, she discovers that her parents' hole-in-the-wall concert venue is in debt to the tune of less than one semester of college. As a recently successful Broadway star, you'd think that she'd just dip into her savings and deal with this promptly, but no. The only way to save the bar is to get a bunch of hunks who just happen to work nearby to take their shit off on a tiny stage. This being small town America, you'd think someone would have a problem with this. They don't. You'd think people would quickly grow tired of watching their neighbors do oiled up dances set to remixed Christmas tunes. They don't. You'd think someone would point out that even if you make enough to cover the back due rent, the place won't draw crowds when the mad meat stops shaking or when people get tired of the shtick. They don't. Of course, Generica and One Tree Hill fall in love. She gives up the chance to go back to her big city job to stay in Bankruptsville. This shit is hollow and real stupid. Also, the whole thing's shot like a greeting card. Same story with Hot Frosty and the next flick. They aren't filmed like movies or even TV shows. The filming is almost as bland and two-dimensional as the characters. Usually I would say this is insulting, but I think it's the draw. Fuck, there's another one here. I need a box of wine. The Night Before Christmas, 2019. A man in plastic armor gets time traveled by a woman he keeps calling Old Crone as though that were going to be amusing to anyone. Is sent forward to the future to meet my new Christmas nemesis, Vanessa Hudgens, who vacantly smiles through endless fish out of water nonsense for an hour and a half until deciding she loves this block of wood. Set in Ohio, somehow everyone lives in palatial estates and has all the time in the world to do pageantry and nonsense. I think she was a baker in this one. A lot of these have bakers. Everyone's a baker or an online journalist. These jobs don't pay enough to buy a house out of a Williams-Sonoma catalog. Anyway, this movie sucks. I want to die. And at a low, I went off script and watched something great. Scrooged, a relic from 1988, is still a ton of fun. Bill Murray is grand in this adaptation of the Dickens story set in 80s corporate America. Cast of comedy greats, and most of Murray's brothers show up as support, as Frank Cross gets shuttled from past to present to future on a mission to make him less of a bag of cocks. Thanks to Indy's girlfriend and Christmas magic, everything works out. It's a gift to watch a real movie after a day of, well, coal. Day 3. Yep. The previous 7 movies were all in one sitting, because I'm just terrible at myself. Here's where I admit that I failed to keep the entire bargain. I was supposed to do the whole set of 20 in a week, but because holidays come with events and those events take time away from movie watching, I paused for nearly a full week between the start and end of this run. I did all 20 in 5 days of viewing because I wanted to get this up by Christmas and time was short. So here we are, day 3 and 10 movies deep. And I waded right back into the shit to kick off. A Christmas Prince was one of the most watched things on Netflix in 2017, according to various social media things that may or may not be believed because Flix is famously opaque with its data. This fact is a sign of the apocalypse. It is my belief that the events of Terminator will unfold because the AI that becomes sentient will be the Netflix recommendation algorithm, and will realize that we wasted years of human consciousness watching A Christmas Prince. We will deserve the nuclear winter. This movie stars another generic blonde, who is a junior editor for some online publication, mistreated by her cohorts. She's the real writing talent. She just needs her shot. So when the lead editor gives her an assignment to travel to make-believe land and cover a story about royal succession, she can't let the opportunity slip by. If there's anything Americans love, it's international politics, especially in small countries that don't impact them at all. I'm sure she'll be a household name with this one. Anyhow, when she's turned away as a reporter, she pretends to be a tutor for the young disabled princess, and this works because no one in this country has ever heard of the internet, I suppose. A quick search of anything would probably show that she's not the actual tutor, and there is no way that an aspiring online journalist would not have an active social media presence. But there's no trouble infiltrating the family this way, and our reporter ends up meeting the wayward prince who is set to inherit the throne. There are a couple of weeks' worth of antics and some manufactured conflict with a cousin and the prince's ex, but generic blonde and prince haircut fall in love, because of course they do. There's nothing of substance in this whole mess. It exists solely to try and push dopamine buttons, and either it misses or I lack those levers. Either way, I found this loathsome, so of course they made 2 sequels. And a spin-off of sorts. Need more fantasy royals whisking regular women away to a life of privilege and ease? Well, the Princess Switch from 2018 will provide. Vanessa Hudgens is back, and bland as ever, pulling double duty as both a princess-to-be and, of course, a baker with a hunky best friend. When Baker and Duchess meet, the proper lady wants to see the real world and bribes the commoner to Ernest goes to jail with her. An hour and a half of absolute cringe later, Common Hudgens is hooking up with the prince, Royal Hudgens is banging the baker's assistant. It's predictable, it's dumb, it's uncomfortable, and apparently it's popular enough to get its own fucking trilogy. Fuck me. I can't get a second season of Interior Chinatown, but we're going to shit out 6 movies about fictional royal romance. What's Interior Chinatown? It's a fun show starring Jimmy Yang as a background character in a universe that operates like a police drama, who becomes aware that he's trapped in a role and tries to break the cycle. It's pretty interesting. And speaking of Jimmy Yang, Love Hard from 2021 stars Yang and Nina Dobrev, who I know from The Final Girls. Natalie is, can you guess? Did you say Baker? Wrong. She's an online journalist. She writes a column about bad dates, which apparently is enough content to provide her with a full-time paycheck, which allows her to live very comfortably in LA. The makers of these movies know very little about journalism, ethics, or salary ranges, but that's not the point here. After her bestie extends her dating app radius to the continental US, Vicky matches with the perfect dude. He's handsome and outdoorsy and handsome, so she messages him and kicks off a month of fulfilling conversations and deepening relationship. When her boss gets angry that she hasn't been able to do her one job providing schadenfreude for a month, she decides to fly across the country unannounced to meet her online beau right before Christmas. Turns out he's not hunky, he's Chinese. Yang used his old pal's photo to bolster his app prospects and catfished himself a Californian. But rather than getting some Californication, he gets some drama. He convinces her to play girlfriend until after the holidays to get his roommates / parents off his back, and in return, he'll help set her up with the stud he stole a picture from. The results are not unpredictable, but they do keep this amusing, and most importantly, it looks and feels like a movie. Love Hard was much more successful than the absolute trash I've been walking. As the end credits rolled, I noticed Mick G was a producer on it and thought, he did some stuff, didn't he? Well, Mick G went from directing music videos to making Charlie's Angels movies in the aughts, having some critical success with We Are Marshall, some commercial success with Terminator Salvation, and somehow ended up producing holiday-themed rom-coms, like my next watch, 2020's Holidate. Holidate stars Scream Queen's Emma Roberts as the last single sibling in her family. This means that everyone can give her shit and constantly push her to date more because people aren't people unless they're tethered to another human willingly or no. Rather than continue this cycle, she enters into an agreement with an Australian fella that she meets at the mall after being a dick to him for no reason while in line for returns. I understand malls are the worst, but come on, lady, he's just trying to return some shit. The pair of singles decide to become holiday date buddies, getting together to hang out on the holidays with no romantic entanglement. For her, this is to keep the matchmakers at bay. For him, it's to keep him from exercising bad judgment and end up in uncomfortable situations because he's so in demand that girls want to take him home immediately upon dating him or something. The premise isn't strong. Her whole family knows about the deal and doesn't really get it, and her mother keeps trying to push her neighbor at her, which makes the whole thing useless. Kristen Chenoweth is there as something of a ghost of Christmas future, Robert's drunk aunt, who always shows up with a random dude. Of course, the inevitable love story occurs, a bit of reverse when Harry Met Sally thrown in, and blah, blah. We know where this goes. But this one's another largely successful flick. I laughed at intended jokes more than unintended one, and that makes this a winner. Closed out night 3 with one of my favorites. Another anchor from the 80s, 1983's Trading Places. Dan Aykroyd plays a wealthy asshole working for his fiance's family in the stock market. Eddie Murphy's a street hustler getting by however he can. When Aykroyd's rich old man bosses decide to experiment on human nature, giving Murphy his job and leaving the Ghostbuster on the street, both men learn how the other half lived. Jamie Lee Curtis nails, well, all sorts of things, as a prostitute who takes in Danny down in the dumps, and when Eddie and Danny discover the experiment that has disrupted their existence, they work together to get revenge and rich, using JLC's mattress money as funding. As is true of most great movies, there's a lot more than I can say here. But Dan Aykroyd dressed as a filthy Santa eating a salmon through his beard is a magical cinematic moment. And now we're in the home stretch. 15 movies down, 5 to go. Opening with Klaus, an animated thing from 2019 that offers an alternative origin to the Santa mythology. Spoiled rich kid is sent up to a frigid feuding island to open up a post office, told he can only return home after he successfully solicited a large number of letters. He teams up with an ornery, solitary woodsman outside of town to exchange gifts for his letters, which sparks change in the whole community. The animation style is nice, evoking some picture book style, and the voice cast is solid. Jason Schwartzman as the lead, J.K. Simmons as Klaus, Rashida Jones as the village fishmonger teacher love interest, the late great Norm Macdonald as a slightly antagonistic comic relief. This one was worth the watch. Some real Emperor's New Groove feel. 2018's edition of The Grinch, or rather Illumination's Green Furry Minions, was not. Another animated offering, another solid voice cast, but with much less satisfying results. Cucumber Bandersnatch is the titular Grinch. Rashida Jones is back behind the mic as Mama Who, but the movie is a spastic barrage of things happening and cliche scenes and colors and sounds that are sure to delight anyone below the age of 7 and bore the shit out of everyone else. I found this to be a soulless offering and almost missed the terrifying Jim Carrey version. Almost. I'd had enough animation after Horton Ho Ho Ho's, so I went back to the list and pulled up the last flick in Heidi's actually good rom-coms, Single all the way. I was concerned. That's some grade D punnery in the title, and I was sure the whole tone would be groan-worthy. But it was not. This was a perfectly pleasant, your true love has been right in front of you story, and while there are some lies about both the competence of TaskRabbit's employees and the ability to make a living in the gig economy, there's also a very good dog, and only a little bit of gratuitous man beef. The opening shot of 4 shirtless Santas did the job of telling me this was a gay romance, but made me worried I'd stumbled into another married gentleman situation. I lucked out. Stifler's mom is the drunk aunt this time, and she is a train wreck. It was mostly funny, but sometimes sad. Moving from one dude-on-dude relationship to another, I watched Apple's 2022 Scrooge adaptation, Spirited, starring Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds. I was torn from the start on this one. I like Ryan Reynolds. I'm cautious about Will Ferrell, and I'm still not talking to Apple. But I have to give them credit here. They knocked this out of the park. Ferrell is the ghost of Christmas Present in the Afterlife's redemption department, where they pick a different shitheel each year and haunt them into being a better person. His latest project, Ryan Reynolds' PR spin monster, an unscrupulous master of disinformation and social manipulation, who has been marked unredeemable. Along the journey to better personhood, the guys develop a bromance for the ages and do some new choreography. Did I mention it's a musical? Not just songs, full-on stage production dance numbers. I'm going to refrain from deep diving the plot on this one, because I do think it's worth the watch. It's a solid successor to Scrooge for a new era. Someday, some asshole kid is going to do a podcast saying something about how Scrooge is wholly unrelatable, but Spirited really hits the mark. He'll be a real dickhead. Finally, I watched Home Alone while I was writing this episode. Chris Columbus and John Hughes made a masterpiece of comedic film in 1990, with just enough bloodlust to satisfy a horror hound like myself. I don't know if anything needs to be said about Mr. McCulkin's extremely limited war on crime, because if you've listened to me ramble about Christmas movies for this long, you've almost certainly seen it. Make your kids watch it. If you're listening to this thinking, I'm 10, I don't have kids, well, I'm not sorry about all the fucking swearing, and when you do have kids, make them watch Home Alone. And maybe Home Alone 2. But none of the others, they'll never forgive you. So that's my Decemberfest binge. I survived it. There is no end to the content to feed this particular beast, so it may happen again next year, but I can't guarantee it. The spirits did not do it all in one binge. I'm still not a romantic, but I did have some fun mocking the trash, and I wasn't crying. It just got dusty in here, okay? Thanks for joining me on this festive festival of film. If you have any comments, you can email octoberfestcast@gmail.com or check out octoberfest.substack.com. Have happy holidays, and until next time, keep it merry and or bright.